What the Spirit is saying.
Thank you very much. We want to thank Mr. Dagatola. He's the chairman of the Association of Nigerian Authors, the largest organization of authors in Nigeria. So I'm really grateful to him for coordinating this event. I thank the dignitaries from the schools and the education sector. Thanks Sky Bank, who will be donating books to the children. And we have not left Lagos State out. In 2008, I took Governor Fashola into a classroom like this near his office in Alausa, and he read to the children. So this is not the first time we're working with children in Lagos State, and it will not be the last. Thank you. My name is Coco Kalango. I represent the Rainbow Book Club. We encourage people to read for personal and national development. We believe the society will move forward if we all get into reading. Once in a while, at least every year, we take a role model into the classroom to read to children. Last month we did this with Governor Mechi in River State. We brought Professor Shoyinka and many others to read to children. This morning, sitting beside me is a role model. Dr. Ezekwesili is a role model for several reasons. Not only was she our Minister for Education, but after that, she went on to represent Africa at the World Bank, and she rose to a very high office, which is Vice President Africa at the World Bank. So I don't think we have a better person to bring to you, to show you what books can do in your life than Mrs. Ezekwesili. Please welcome her. But she's not just a role model because of these high positions in society which she has held, but she's a role model too because alongside that, she's a wife, she's a mother, and she's a very successful homekeeper. That makes her special. Many times, you meet women, I meet women who are excelling in different areas of their lives, but sometimes they're not able to do well in their career and do well at home as well. Are you listening to me? Yes. Girls and boys as well. This is very important. If you are a success outside and everybody is clapping for you, and you are not a success in your home, then that is not real success, okay? And I happen to know also from relating with Mrs. Ezekwesili over the years that the successful person you see in public is the same person in private. You know, she's a woman to whom things like honor and integrity are important. So it's not just anybody we bring to you. It's not just anybody who has done well outside, but we try to bring people also who have a personal life from which you can learn. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, it's not a day to make long speeches, but I'm going to tell you to take advantage of the fact that she's sitting in front of you, okay? Don't let her go like that without wrenching from her the secrets of her life, the secrets of why she's been able to be who she is today. You need to, if I was in your shoes I will ask her so many questions today. She's a very busy woman. This is history. You may not sit with her again in a room. So please take full advantage. Can we welcome her again? Before I hand over to Madame to read, I'll just give you a brief summary of this book. Our book today is The Missing Clock by Mai Nasara. Mai Nasara is actually a pen name, it's a writing name. The author's real name is Adeyemi Adeleke. I wanted him to be here today, but he's out of the country. So we will do with reading his book. And this book, as you can see, it has a red sticker. That means he won a very important prize. The prize is called the Nigerian Prize for Literature. That's what he won for writing this book. So this is a very important book to Nigeria. Now, The Missing Clock is a story of a little boy called Banji, who had a clock he loved so much. And he didn't want to have just one of that clock. He wanted to have several of the clock. And he knew something about life, that if you want to have a lot of something, you first sow it, you plant it, okay? If you want to have lots of fruits, you plant a seed, don't you? So because he knew that, in his naiveness as a child, he went to plant the clock, thinking that a tree will come out and he would have a lot of clocks. But it was that naive idea of a child that helped his family. His father had been working a very good job in an office. Then he got laid off. He lost his job. And he came back home, he was discouraged. He didn't know how he will feed his family. But then came an idea from Banji's thoughts, and that is to go into farming. And from friends of theirs visiting, friends of theirs who were into farming, they took seeds and began to plant. And they planted ugu, which is a green vegetable that is used to prepare delicious dishes in Nigeria. Anyway, they started that business and they prayed. And along the way, the business began to grow and flourish. And a businesswoman who was working in a microfinance bank came. I hope you're following me. We've all read the book. And bought all their ugu and even told them she would give them money to make their business bigger. Anyway, the business kept growing. From growing the ugu, someone else came and said, we'll set up a website and begin to sell the ugu around the world. Not just to Nigerians, but to Nigerians around the world. From there, the family, the Toby family, also even wrote a book about vegetables. Then they had a television show, so they kept growing richer and richer. That's why a very important sentence here says, though you start with little, you shall end with plenty. And we will see as we read the different lessons we can learn that can help us indeed end with plenty, that can help us become a role model like Madame here. So are we ready to read? Yes. Okay, I'm going to ask everybody to turn to page 64. And as I said to you before, we'll read the bottom half of page 64, we'll read page 65, 66, 67, 68, then we'll move down to page 72, and we'll read page 72 and page 73. I'm handing over the microphone to Madame now to read, so you would keep quiet and listen and follow. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am. Well, I am so delighted to be with you today. How many of you have seen me before? So this is the first time you're seeing me. For many of you. How many of you have seen me on television before? Many of you. Okay. I am so happy to be with you. And I'm going to tell you why after we finish our reading. Okay? Yes. I want to thank the dignitaries that are here, particularly the principal that has welcomed us to the school, and also to the representatives of the Ministry of Education for Lagos State. Thank you so very much. But I really want you to clap for Mrs. Kalango. The reason that I wanted you to clap for her especially is that, you know, when I was Minister of Education, one of the initiatives that I had was something called Read Campaign. Regrettably, did not carry on after I left the ministry. But I was very happy to see how forcefully Coco Kalango, who for many years has been my mentee, how she's carried on with this idea of getting the nation to read, particularly getting the children to read. And so for the incredible work that Mrs. Kalango has done, for being an unsung heroine of our country, I want you all to stand up with me and to clap for her. Thank you very much. Thank you. My prayer for you is that one day we'll be clapping for you like this too. Yeah! It starts with reading, and that's why we're going to start now. Hello, farmers. Mrs. Ezekwesili's cheery voice carried over to the Tobys all the way from the gate. She strolled across. Is this working well? Can you hear me still? Okay. She strolled across. Lest I forget, whenever you start selling your ugu, I came to say I want to be the first to buy. Mr. and Mrs. Toby exchanged excited looks. We've started selling. They said almost in unison. But their neighbor wasn't listening. What's that in your hand? She was gazing wide-eyed at the paper Mr. Toby was holding out. I was just about to show my wife, Mr. Toby said, as he handed his neighbor the piece of paper. It's a drawing of the logo I intend to use for the ugu business. What started it all? Remember? While he spoke, Mrs. Ezekwesili's jaw had fallen slack. It's a bunny clock, she blurted out finally. The clock Banji planted, which developed legs and walked away, Mrs. Toby explained. Mommy, it has become a mole. Suddenly, Mrs. Ezekwesili let out a cry. How could I have been stupid? She covered her face like someone ashamed. Then she gasped and with a wail, wheeled around and dashed out of the compound. Banji glanced up at his father. Daddy, why is everybody crying today? His parents' bewildered eyes were riveted on their dramatic neighbor doing a disappearing act. The United Nations must have declared today World Crying Day, his father declared with a shrug. Mr. and Mrs. Toby were still standing transfixed when a slim, expensively dressed woman slipped through the gate. In her hurry, Mrs. Ezekwesili had left it ajar. I could not help but notice your ugu as I drove by, the newcomer began. Can I buy directly from you, or do I have to go to your shop? Wow. You can buy directly from us, Mrs. Toby managed to answer. The prospective customer wondered at the stutter, but didn't comment. Her interest laid elsewhere. I've never seen such healthy-looking ugu all my life. The woman's eyes raked over the garden as she spoke. She could not hide her admiration for the lush leaves. I'll be buying a lot, mind you. I'm sure we can meet your needs, Mr. Toby replied. Just how much is a lot? Mrs. Toby asked. My little sister is getting worried. We're cooking for the grooms. Oh, how much is a lot? Mrs. Toby asked. My little sister is getting married. We're cooking for the groom's entire village. She was chuckling. We have to start right now. Right, you know, she added with a wink. Make a big first impression. A village load? That's a lot. Mrs. Toby gasped. I'm sure my husband will be happy to give you a discount. Oh, that's good to know, the newcomer said. She glanced at her wristwatch. I have to go now to keep an appointment, but I'll be back. She turned to leave. See you next weekend. Don't forget I said I want to be the first to buy, Mrs. Ezekwesili yelled from the gate. She let the caller pass. At the sight of the pair of entrants, one bowed, and in tow after the other, the caller found an excuse to dawdle. For just a minute or two, it was obvious there was drama in the air. Mrs. Ezekwesili swept forward with her hands, no, sorry, Mrs. Ezekwesili swept forward, with his hands folded out of sight behind him. Alfonso ambled along sheepishly behind her. She addressed the Tobys. Do you recognize this? In Alfonso's outstretched hand was the body clock. Yepe! Huh? Good. Clap for yourselves again. I wanted to know whether you have an Ajegule posh slang to yippee, but I'm glad that you understand that when you read, you must read English in the way that the English have written it. Have you understood what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Say it again.
Yippee.
Wonderful. So we continue. Yippee! Banji yelled. Yippee! Mommy, I told you, Bunny is back. Mrs. Toby stared in disbelief. She took the clock, gazed at it, then she fumbled with the back of the clock, and while everybody looked on expectantly, opened the secret compartment hesitantly. Her valuables were still there, intact. Timely, she muttered. So timely. She closed her eyes. Dear God, thank you. Thank you. We will call the business Timely Vegetables. Mr. Toby announced. Soon, large tracts of arable land were secured and cultivated for Timely Vegetables, with financing provided by Gaskia Microfinance Bank. Many busy and blissful months went by speedily. One day, Mr. Toby chanced on the notebook his wife had started to keep since the business began. It's a journal, he mused aloud, on Ugu. This looks interesting. He recalled telling his wife shortly after the venture started that it would turn out to be the most worthwhile thing they ever did. He smiled when he saw what she wrote on it as motto. He nodded approvingly when he saw whose name she wrote under teacher, Professor Rashida Ashiru. Who was she? That Mrs. Toby had. Pardon? That Mrs. Toby had done what about?
Fulfilling the word.
That Mrs. Toby. Yes, I know. That what did Mrs. Toby think of her? She had judged her without establishing the fact. She decided that simply because Rashida was a house help, that she could be nothing but a thief. How wrong she was. So now, in order to make penance for what she had done, she decided to honor Rashida. For those of you that have been looked down on, if you continue to do the right thing, one day those people that have looked down on you will also call you professor. Amen. His wife slipped in on him. Indeed, she is. After all, I took my cue from her. Come to think of it, we both did. She looked him square in the face and with a wink carried on. And someone else once taught me something from an ancient text that has today become my motto, my watchword. Mr. Toby was speechless from delight as he listened on. His wife, by now, had drawn close to embrace him. It was as if she had a speech prepared. Today, we're together as partners, which is really part owners. Something you taught me during courtship, of so much more than we started out with. Thank you, dear husband, for carrying me along, and with so much patience and understanding. Mr. Toby was beaming with pride, holding on gently to his wife. He closed the book and held it up to their eye level. Together, they read out the motto. And we're going to read it together. 1, 2, go. Though you started with little, you will end with much. What? Though you started with little, you will end with much. It is so true. The lesson, the central lesson of this book is something that I want you to know is real. I want you to know that, like yourselves today, I actually did my primary school here in Ezekwesili. There's a school that my family owned. My uncle had been the House of Parliament representative for Apapa in the Western House of Parliament in those days. His name, he was Chief Fred Ebubedike, and he started a school known as African One School. And my father was his first cousin, although his younger first cousin. But so he acted as an uncle to his first cousin, who was my father. So when my father finished his education, he came to live with him. And then he got married. Chief Ebubedike saw my mom, and they got married with my dad. And they gave birth to me. And we were living with my uncle because he was a man with property. So I grew up in that environment, and I went to the family primary school known as African One School. That's where I got my primary education. Now, though your beginning be little, will be what? You end with much. I went to primary school here in Ezekwesili. Can you imagine that?